Hello, folks.
Hi,
This
everybody.
is the premier edition of Empowering Democracy. And your hosts are Lisa Theobald and myself, Joe Firestone. Thank you very much for coming. Uh, what we're going to do for this episode is to tell you what empowering democracy is about. Uh, so let's pull up the presentation. Of course, it says empowering democracy. First of all, this is a news program. It's concerned with the current affairs. It's focused on matters, um, on issues, on categories, actually, categories of issues that are related to public purpose. For each of these issues or categories, we can talk about the gaps between what we like to see as people and the reality that exists today. There's always a gap between these two things. When the gaps in these categories of issues grow smaller, democracy becomes empowered and gains in the legitimacy of the government of a democracy. When the gaps grow larger, democracy gets weaker. Okay? It loses legitimacy, and sometimes it ends. In our view, the United States today is a situation where the government has lost a lot of the legitimacy it once had. If you look at the legitimacy of the government at the end of the Second World War, for example, it was very, very high. Most people trusted our government, they trusted our political parties, they trusted our system, and these high levels of trust pretty much lasted through the 1960s. If you look from the 1960s up to today, the general trend is for people to become less happy with the government and for the legitimacy of the government to decline and for the legitimacy of our system of rule to decline. Where we find ourselves now is in a crisis of the legitimacy of our democratic system. There are many people who think we no longer have a democratic system. And full disclosure, uh, we are people who at least think that our democratic system now is very, very weak and is in danger, of ending. So this series covers news about various categories of public purpose, the following categories that we're going to talk about right now. Uh, okay, but the point is that our news program is supposed to help us to understand whether our democracy is growing stronger or weaker.
And may I also interject that we're going to cover the reasons why?
We certainly are. So we can act to make it stronger. So we have an activist purpose to our news program as well. We're not just taking the traditional position of people who report and say, this is what happened, that's what happened, the other thing what happened. We have an agenda, and our agenda is to make our democracy stronger. So, okay, going to our categories of public purpose. Most of us want to create a dynamic economy and maintain that dynamism too. Most of us are looking for economic justice. There are many who are in favor of trade for public purpose, not necessarily trade for balance, not necessarily trade which is for the benefit, okay, of rich people or some other category of people, but trade for what we think is the public purpose. The idea being trade ought to benefit the public purpose of the United States rather than any particular group of people. There are many of us also who want to maximize equality, all kinds of equality. But we wanted to bring front and center to women's equality right now because that is under severe threat. Would you like to say a word about that severe threat, Lisa?
Well, I think we all know that women have been assaulted with the overturning of Roe. But personally, I'd like to point out that it's not even in the news cycles anymore. Our politicians aren't talking about it. Joe Biden handed it off to Kamala. Who's excited? Who actually thinks that Kamala is going to get anything done on this issue?
He handed it off to Kamala so he could concentrate on the war.
Yeah, yeah. But I mean, I'm trying to point out that no one is talking about it. As a matter of fact, the few people that are bringing up abortion rights are the male politicians that are running, that are getting the most TV time. I mean, we have female politicians running on Roe, but they're not our elected politicians. They're all our grassroots politicians for the most part. The Democratic Party doesn't even want to talk about it anymore. And what we've got going on right now, what I've seen in the last 24 hours, are a bunch of men talking about how, Roe is, or abortion rights isn't even number 2, it's number 3 in the polling. It is really important that women understand that this assault on women is coming out in very subtle narratives, including, by the way, the situation with Herschel Walker. The Republican Party now is, and the Democrats are joining in, but they are trying to bury Herschel Walker because he paid for one of his, I don't even know if it's his ex-wife or just one of the mothers of his children, to have an abortion. So what? So what? That is not what's wrong with Herschel Walker. And the fact that that is the reason that they're going to try and bury him is just yet a further assault on women. Women's rights. And it is a malaise. It is very subtle, but it is very easy for people to be like, oh, yeah, Roe, that's right. Well, let's go talk about Ukraine. Oh, yeah, Roe. Well, whatever. Let's talk about whatever the thing is that happened yesterday, wherever it happened in the world.
We want to emphasize that the issue of equality for one half of the population is enormously important. It's one of continuing importance. It should never be put on the back burner. We can't allow the people who run this country to put this on the back burner. Now, we're very concerned over Ukraine also. As you'll see tonight, our first will show, okay, is going to be on what is to be done about that situation. So we're not in any way downgrading that, but we're just saying that women's equality should have been a major issue from the time of a decision of the Supreme Court right up through the election. Instead, they've postponed it until after the election, when, of course, the pressure won't be on them to do anything about it. So we're pretty mad about that. Next category is creating bottom up democracy. And that's another issue that has to be front and center every single day, because we have lost our bottom up democracy if we ever had it. And if we want this country to operate in a correct way, we need bottom up democracy all the time, continuously. We have
There is an assault right now on ballot initiatives in several states. They're trying to weaken them and get rid of them entirely. And that's something that the states need to focus on. People in their states need to focus on that. But these are the things that, while we're worried about what's going on in Ukraine, we are allowing the politicians to not focus on what is wrong with our democracy here. They're running on, our democracy is on the ballot. They don't get to, we can't allow them to just get away with running on that. That's not specific enough. That gets them off the hook. Like they continue to get off the hook on every issue.
Okay, next is creating environmental and ecological sustainability. That too is an overriding issue. Why do we have so many issues that are overriding issues? Because as democracy has weakened in the United States over the last 40 to 45 years, we have not been solving our problems. And that's why we have so many issues that are overriding today. Why has it taken 50 years since Roe to codify it into law? Because our legislators keep on putting off the issues. They never solve them. They put Band-Aids on them, but they're always there. And so they become overriding issues over a period of time. We have to stop that. We have to make them attend to and solve our problems as they present themselves. Otherwise, as a nation and as a world, we won't have the adaptiveness to survive. This is about survival. Ending the climate emergency. It's about survival. It threatens the very existence of our kind, humanity. We have to maximize free at the point of service healthcare, specifically Medicare for all. That's so important to so many people, millions and millions of people who suffer under the present system, and our politicians won't get rid of a simple Senate rule that blocks progress on this and so many other fronts. I'm referring, of course, to the filibuster. We have problems with nutrition, with our food production, something so basic, our distribution, our consumption. Our food is not healthy, and Americans are not healthy as a result, and the politicians pay no attention to that, okay, at all. And wars. How many wars, covert, okay, or overt, is the United States involved in today? Of course, we've mainly got our focus on the Ukraine war. But of course, we have actions going on in many countries. That's why we have how many bases? Hundreds of military bases in many countries. So when we want to use force in those countries, we can use force in those countries. They may not be considered war with a capital W, but there are a lot of places where American armed forces, okay, are fighting.
We have to bring back diplomacy in America. We have zero diplomacy. Zero. And we are touting that. You bring up the word diplomacy and needing to come open talks and get to a diplomatic solution, and you get labeled a Putin apologist. Well, label me a Putin apologist all day long. If we can't talk to each other civilly, which is the main problem of why everything is so crazy around here, and our media facilitates it. Everybody is divided, and now our leaders have decided that diplomacy, well, don't let them talk about diplomacy. Anybody talking about diplomacy is automatically going to be labeled a Putin apologist. Well, if we're going to roll over and run away from that, then we don't have any hope. I mean, I personally think that right now what we have is an opportunity to demand of the Congress the representation of the people through uniting and demanding that we come to some diplomatic resolution on this war. Because we literally are, and it is not hyperbole, on the precipice of a nuclear war.
And that, by the way, is the subject we'll be talking about in our 9 p.m. show this evening. Our final category is developing, innovating, and assessing new technology. That is very important as a background issue from the standpoint of the adaptiveness of the United States. I'm not even talking now about the competitiveness of the United States, but society is always changing. There are new problems, okay, that are presenting themselves. There are emergencies, such as the climate emergency. There's a big role for innovation and for technological change, and there's a big role for assessing technological change because we have a lot of technological change going on that's actually harming us instead, okay, of helping us. When we introduce new technology, before it takes hold, we should be assessing what the likely social and political impacts of that particular technology are going to be. For example, there was no technology assessment of what Facebook or Twitter or our social media, there was no assessment of what kind of impacts they were likely to have on our society. And they have had all kinds of unintended consequences, and maybe some intended consequences which really didn't get assessed. We have to stop that. We have to officially be managing um, our innovations and our technology so they do not harm us, so that they help us and the benefits can be realized. We need to make democracy stronger by acting to increase our bottom up democracy, by ejecting big money and the candidates who take it from Congress and from the presidency also. This is job one. We've not been doing this job. Look at the primary season we just got finished with. All kinds of very good candidates were defeated because big money came in on the side of another candidate. It's a scandal. big money from rich corporations and rich donors and billionaires should not be determining who wins elections. We have a mayor contest going on right now, okay, in Los Angeles. We have an experienced politician who's generally been a very good politician, a very good state legislator, a very good congresswoman compared to others. Now she's running for mayor, okay, of Los Angeles. And she is running against a huge billionaire who's already spent something like $50 million on his campaign for mayor. He has no political experience. He has no political track record. We have no reason to believe that he would be a good mayor. But here he is putting in huge amounts of money into his campaign. And now he's just about even with Karen Bass, who's running against him. There's no reason at all to elect him except for the fact that he's deluging the airwaves with his ads. That's all that's allowed him to get on even terms with Karen Bass. We can't have this in our political system. Who gets elected cannot be dictated by money. That's what's happened to our political system over many years. That's why our democracy is so weak. We have another problem in Congress that undermines our democracy. We have senators and representatives who act in a nakedly partisan way all the time. We have key issues that come up, and certain people in Congress won't want to do anything about those key issues because it would be seen as a victory for Joe Biden. They don't care what the interest of the United States is. They don't care what the public interest is. They just don't want to do anything which might give the current president some advantage. And of course, the opposite is the case when a Republican is in the presidency. Then there are Democrats who act in a nakedly partisan way. We have to throw out candidates who act in a nakedly partisan way because they're not legislating in our interest. They don't care about our interest. They only care about the power of themselves and their political party. And next, we have to pass laws that benefit people rather than donors. How do we do this again? We have to get rid of the big money, okay, in politics. So legislators turn to the people, ask, what do our voters want, not what do our donors want. The more of this we do, the more democracy will be legitimatized again. The less of it we do, the more democracy will be suspect. So that's our say on the general thrust of what we'll be doing here. But now we get to who are we and how are we going to operate. Lisa, please give your background to everyone.
Oh, I wasn't thinking that I was going to do a resume here. I am very concerned about where we were even in 2015 to where we are now. The bipartisanship, the division, it's in everything. Even vying for attention on issues is causing division everywhere. It's how we operate. It's how we talk to one another now. It's how people don't even argue anymore. This is what I think. That's what you think. Okay, I'm not talking to you anymore. You're my enemy. And I see it in our own circles. People do this to one another. What's more important, Medicare for all or getting health care passed in the states? Because Medicare for all is not going anywhere right now. So, if we could have got everybody on board with the state piece of the puzzle, we could have had 3 states with state-based single-payer healthcare, which would be not a detriment to Medicare for all. It would be a springboard to Medicare for all. So I started out back then supporting Bernie because I knew that things were not going well, and I went into healthcare activism and finance. I've got a huge finance background. Started out in audit. I went to do federal taxation. I was in banking, and then I jumped into healthcare. I did the U.S. Census on a area census office level in Allegheny County here. And through the years since then, it's almost 7 years now, what I've seen is nothing but deterioration in how the American people relate to one another when it comes to politics. We are so divided. And I think that we are also on a precipice of no return at the moment. If we do not start realizing that our house has been our house, Congress, has been co-opted, we can take that back. But we've got to find issues that we can unite around to demand that Congress starts acting through the voice of the people. And I think that the situation now is ripe for that. Because if we can't all get around this idea that nuclear war is the end of all of us, what else is there? And what we need to do right now is come together, demand that of our Congress, and hope that we can get enough of us to start demanding that of Congress, because I'm not waiting until November. Once November comes, they're scot-free again. It's something that we can do right now. We pressure them right now, 3.5 weeks before we go to the polls to reelect them. It's an opportunity that we have, and if we miss this window, we're going to be right back to where we started again, only it keeps getting worse. Okay, I think that's enough for me right now.
Okay, thank you, Lisa. Okay, my background stretches back, a long way. I went into graduate school in the 1960s, got my PhD in comparative politics, and international relations. That's where I started out. I did conflict studies. I did studies of the intentions of nations. I did work on social indicators. I moved into a period where I did nothing but research on civil strife, including urban civil strife, which was very important at that time. I then moved over to the Census Bureau. They were doing studies for the Department of Agriculture, trying to assess the needs of communities at the state level, and at the local level, as well. I did a lot of very complicated statistical analysis in order to develop indexes, of need, so you could compare local communities and states by their needs assessment scores. Soon after that, I became fascinated by microcomputers. And so, with some partners, I started a microcomputer company. Uh, okay, I ran that for roughly 12 years until changes in government financing created a situation where the microcomputer company wasn't doing very well. And so then I went back into statistical analysis and worked for a market research type of company for some time. I learned data warehousing, okay, and data mining, and then quickly moved into knowledge management, where I did lots of research in training for how long was that? Maybe 10 to 12 years. I wrote a few books in that area. Okay, then I realized that I wanted to go back to what I loved at the start, which was politics. I wanted to find my voice again. That was in the Obama administration. Since then, I've been blogging, I've been writing, and I've been live streaming. I've done a lot of economics. I have an MMT orientation that's very strong, and I've written 7 ebooks, okay, in the MMT area. Okay, and in the last few years, okay, I've been live streaming. A lot of that live streaming has been okay on MMT issues. But in the last couple of years, I've broadened out so I could use my whole background. And that's what I've been doing in my live streams. Uh, okay, going away from background now, our plans. We plan to do roughly 3 shows per day to begin with. Those shows will be, I don't know, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, 40 minutes at the maximum, an hour, okay, in length. We'll do 1 show per day where we're going to team. Okay, today is an exception. We're going to team on 2 shows. On most days, we'll be doing 2 shows, okay, as individuals. I will probably be doing those shows, but I think Lisa will probably want to do occasional individual shows as well. We'll be doing occasional panel shows. I don't know how frequent that's going to be, but we have a lot of people who like to collaborate with us. So I think we'll be bringing them on, okay, in panel shows, and we'll be bringing them on as guests, okay, as well. Some of our shows will be, as this one is, live streams. Some of our shows will be videos. We'll mostly be doing shows on Monday to Friday. There'll be no set times. The reason why there are no set times is we want to be responsive to immediate changes in the issues because something happens on the news. And to give that kind of coverage that's really up to date, we have to be very flexible with our shows. So, in terms of scheduling, what we're saying is look for us in late mornings, late afternoons, okay, and the evenings. The evening shows will be after 8, okay, at least they'll probably be mostly at 9 p.m. So those are our plans. I hope you like what we've described and the orientation, okay, of the series. I think we're just about done for this first show. Would you like to add anything, Lisa?
No, I just hope that everybody joins us because it's really important that we try to come together instead of falling for the divisiveness that is really burying our ability to come together and demand of our politicians what is necessary for us to move forward. off of where we are right now, which is utterly divided and not talking to one another. And hopefully empowering one another not to be afraid of the labels that people put on you when you argue legitimate points. Being able to sniff out the divisiveness that comes into play in the political rhetoric and in what we see in the media, and maybe being able to talk to one another a little bit more with some open minds instead of just shutting down.
Okay, thanks. Of course, I share those sentiments. Okay, I also want to emphasize that the objective of the show to help to strengthen our democracy, okay, is overridingly important, and we hope that you'll support us because we are trying to do this and because we are successfully doing it. We don't really see anybody else trying to do this, and we think democracy needs its supporters, okay, its warriors, and we intend to be those warriors.
I just want to say CC Swift is very excited to be here. Please join us again this evening at 9 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. We are going to be talking about the conflict with Russia and in the Ukraine and the US and NATO.
And thank you for coming now.
Yes.
We're so glad that you're here for the first show. This show will also be put up as a video from time to time. It's going to be like a tweet that's pinned. Every once in a while, we're going to rerun it to remind people what we're about, to give people an opportunity to see the show who are not able to make it here today. And
we're getting off the ground. So we're going to be retweeting ourselves and the shows as much as possible because we're groundbreaking here. We've got new things to do, right, Joe?
Yep, lots of new things to do. Thank you very much, Dolores, as usual.
As always. And go
for being here. And CC Swift, it's great to see you. Okay, and hopefully we'll see you again tonight. And we hope to be joined by a lot more people in the 9 o'clock slot, because they're used to seeing us in the 9 o'clock slot anyway.
See you later, folks.
Okay, bye. Thanks a lot, folks.